Hola estudiantes! In this video I'm going to cover stem changing verbs. These are verbs that are often referred to as boot verbs because of the shape they take on the chart. All of these are going to have a spelling change from E to IE. Toda la información está en página 199 del libro Avancemos. Estamos en Unidad 4, Lección 1. So our goal for this particular chapter is we've been focusing on shopping and the vocabulary related to shopping. So I'm going to teach you the grammar of E to IE stem changing verbs. We will then use these to continue to talk about clothes you and others want to buy. English grammar connection. Unfortunately, unlike some of the other topics that have some kind of a connection to English, this one is something that's not really something we see in English. So there are no stem changing verbs in the present tense of English. So please make sure you follow along closely and review your general notes on conjugation. Remember, when we've studied other verbs in Spanish, we first learned them as the infinitive. And every infinitive verb has two parts, the stem and the ending. Por ejemplo, el verbo tener. It's an ER verb, so that ER would be my ending, and everything in front of that is the stem. So if I think of it like a flower, the first part of the flower is my stem, and the top is the flower. So those are all different depending on the flower. In Spanish, they're all different depending on the ending, ER, AR, or IR. Stem changing verbs. So some verbs are going to have a stem change or a spelling change in the present tense. So here's an example of a verb that we've already studied. Recuerdas el verbo tener, to have. Notice all the lighter shaded boxes have some kind of a word or a letter or letters that are in red. All of these are irregularities. So this is not a normal ER verb. Notice in the yo form, this was one of our go verbs, so my stem is still ten. I just have to add a G for sound. I can't say yo tengo, I have to say yo tengo. The other forms are going to be similar to what we will cover in the rest of the video. Notice that I have an E to IE stem change. Tienes, tiene, and then over what would make the toe of this boot shape would be tienen. The nosotros and vosotros form do not have any spelling changes, and I conjugate those much like I would a regular ER verb. To review the verb tener, toda la información está en página 91. For this particular chapter, we will be using tener conjugations in order to use some expressions which in English would have the verb to be. Por ejemplo, tener calor, to be hot, tener frío, to be cold, tener razón, to be right, and tener suerte, to be lucky. An example of these is, en el invierno tengo frío y en el verano tengo calor. So in the winter, I am cold, and in the summer, I am hot. So careful with these. It's a little bit different because in English, I would say, I'm lucky, you are lucky. In Spanish, it's literally, I have luck. He has luck. We have luck. So I have to use it as a different expression. Alright, so how do I form present tense E to IE stem changing verbs? Remember, I call these boot verbs. If I look at the chart below, I'm working with an ER verb, querer. So all stem changing verbs have regular AR, ER, or IR endings. So all of these endings are like a normal ER verb. O, es, a, hemos, es, and en. The reason this is called a boot verb is all of the forms except the nosotros and vosotros form have a spelling change. So all those ones kind of take the shape of a boot. Yo quiero, tú quieres. El, ella, usted form would be quiere, E to IE stem change. Nosotros and vosotros, that would be outside of the boot shape, so I'm going to leave those ones alone. No stem change here. Last but not least, I got to remember the toe of the boot, so quieren would be the ellos, ellas, ustedes form. Some other examples of E to IE stem changing boot verbs are the verbs cerrar, to close, empezar, to begin, entender, to understand, pensar, to think, and preferir. When I'm working with a verb that has multiple vowels in it, or multiple E's, for example, entender, I have several E's there. Remember, the ending of the verb is not affected. I will conjugate that accordingly. So it is always the next to last syllable that changes. Or you can say the last E closest to the ending of the verb. So preferir, it's that second syllable. So I change the second E. Un ejemplo, Paula prefiere el vestido azul. Paula prefers the blue dress. Once again, this one is very similar to what we did on the last page, another boot verb. I'm going to change that second E to IE. All my endings are the same, O, es, e. Notice this is an IR verb, so in the nosotros form, instead of EMOS, I will change it to IMOS. In the vosotros form, instead of EIS, it will simply be IS. So these are what we studied when we did ER-IR verbs. We'll review those a bit in class. And finalmente, back to the toe of the boot, prefieren. I have a stem change because it's back in the boot shape. Last but not least, we're going to cover over our back-to-back verbs. Whenever I'm working with a sentence that has two verbs in a row, notice that the first verb is conjugated and the second one will be left in its infinitive form. Por ejemplo, ¿Quieres mirar la televisión o leer un libro? Do you want to watch television or read a book? Since I'm asking you, do you want, I will conjugate that in the to form. And I'm asking you, do you want to watch TV or to read a book? Since I'm using these in the infinitive form, I will go ahead and leave that second one alone. I don't do anything to it. Down below are the conjugations for querer. Remember, boot verbs, the three singular forms, yo, tú, él, ella, usted, all three of those will have a spelling change, as well as the ellos, ellas, ustedes form. So remember, the nosotros and vosotros forms, I will leave alone. I do not need to stem change. Muchas gracias por ver. Thanks for watching. Please make sure you do your practice on the Google form that is in the link below this video. Muchas gracias y adiós.